Welcome to That Japanese Thing. My name's Christopher. Today with me is Dylan and Yesh as my co-hosts. We're going to be talking about the Japanese news up front, and our main topic will be controversies in Japan, including cults and various conspiracy theories. Thank you for taking time to listen to us today. Welcome, guys. How are you doing?
All right.
Good. Let me start us off with the news. My only serious story, and it's not all that serious really, is the Emperor is flying to England for the Queen's funeral. Which is strange, because technically, sort of from like a sort of royalist legal point of view, he's not supposed to really do that. The only funeral the Emperor is supposed to ever attend is someone in his family. So this is a kind of a strange break from tradition, but I'm not sure how strange it is, given that he is basically the Queen's only living contemporary, with the same sort of royal status, I think. So, what do you guys think about that? Should the Emperor be flying to England?
He's kind of a representative, so in a show of representatives, it makes sense for him to...
I mean, what else are you gonna do with an emperor, right? It's not like he actually has any political power or anything like that.
Thankfully, yeah. I mean, that's just it. I'm not particularly a monarchist.
I actually have no idea about his political kind of point of view or anything like that, so I don't know. Yeah.
I think there's like a general maybe cultural power that he might have if he ever wanted to voice an opinion on something.
Yeah.
But I think that would get shut down very hard because of...
I mean, the only Japanese emperors ever had any political power was, Meiji, right?
Yeah, very early.
And,
like Heian.
No, Meiji. Like the Meiji era. So,
yeah.
And that ended in, World War II sort of stuff happening, so that wasn't great. And before that, there was never really an emperor with any political power that mattered, which seems to be the normal thing for Japan. So once again, that is basically assured by the current constitution they have. Although we'll come back to that in our discussion about cults and stuff, and how some of them really want to change that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, this is, I think, a nice thing to do, and it shows, Japan maybe like kind of coming out of its shell a little bit and doing some more international things. And it's generally well known for.
Also quite important diplomatically at the moment with all the tensions to
sure that
reaffirm alliances.
I mean, it's a great way to show whose side you're on generally, I suppose.
Although there was a Chinese representative that went to the Queen's funeral as well.
Apparently Putin wanted to go as well, but that's not happening.
Did not receive invite.
Yes. And then on a much lower tier of social hierarchy, I wanted to complain about the way people list upcoming anticipated shows based on viewer engagement and such things, and then what actually ends up being popular.
Oh, yeah.
So I've got a list of 10 things. Let me just read them out for you that probably are coming out in the next season. There's Bocce the Rock, which briefly discussed last time. Golden Kamuy, Blue Lock, more Bleach, Tiger and Bunny, Season 2, Part 2. Idolish, Third Beat. Urusei Yatsura Reboot. That's the one with the space girl. Chainsaw Man, Spy X Family Part 2, and My Hero Academia Season 6 is the #1 most anticipated show coming out next season.
Well, as voted on that site.
As voted on that site, generally speaking. This is from my anime list, though.
Mm-hmm.
And to just give some context, right? He has a list of the top 10 from this current season that actually ended up being the top watched of the season. #1 is Overlord, 2 Licorice Recoil, Call of the Night, Classroom of the Elite, My Stepmother's Daughter is My Ex, Shadow House, Engage Kiss, Summer Render Time Rendering, sorry, Yakuza's Guide to Babysitting, Vermeil in Gold. Now, I think most of these are quite good, actually. They actually end up being the top 10 watched things on this list. I mean, maybe not My Stepmother's Daughter is My Ex, right? And I have some reservations about Vermeil and Gold. I'm not sure it's particularly good, but I understand why it's in the top 10. But
I actually enjoy it.
right? I mean, it's nothing but fan service, but it's got like kind of like a weird emotional kind of thing going on in the
The
background there.
comedy, I actually enjoy the comedy.
But in general, I think this list is accurate, sort of accurately represents what is pretty good. I mean, there's some other things that are lower down that I think maybe should be higher, like, what's it? The maid I hired recently is Mysterious. I think maybe that should be a little bit higher than like 20th on the list. And maybe
Indeed.
Devil is my part-timer. Maybe it deserves to be 13th, but I'm not really sure. And A Couple of Cookers I think is actually really good, but I don't think many people will watch it because it has a weird title. But that ended up being like what was watched. And if we were to like sort of like go back in time and talk about what people were like talking about, I don't think hardly any of these would have been on there, right? You would have had like the Harem one would have been in there. There would have been My Isekai Life. I was another one that was just really on people's people were talking about a lot. Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer was like thousands of articles are being written about it for some particular reason.
The manga is very good, but the anime was horrific.
I mean, I looked into that. It's fine, but I kind of like watching it, but it is just like a kind of cringe watch at this point. Not particularly good. Blacks, yeah, go on.
I was just going to ask whether that site that you were on was a global site. Is it a Japanese-based site?
No, it's their rankings basically from my anime list of what actually ended up being watched. That's all I'm looking at. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No,
Yeah.
but I meant the predictive list, the one that.
Oh, for next season.
They're all basically things I used. I went into looking for something that was somewhat relatable to numbers. So from my anime list, which is not obviously a Japanese
Okay, so it's
site, right?
it is surprising, yeah.
And I suppose that does sort of swing it towards a bias, but this is also just international numbers. It's not Japanese watching numbers either.
No, but I mean it is interesting because you're like talking about My Hero Academia was supposed to be very, very large.
So I mean, this is for
Outside
for
Japan.
next season, right? This is supposedly going to the most anticipated. Spy X Family, I understand. The first season was pretty good. I think after the fifth season of My Hero, which was unremarkable, putting it at number one seems bizarre.
Remember, this is based off of people's expectation, not on the actual quality.
But then you have something like Yurusai Yatsura Reboot, right? Which is an anime from the 60s that's being remade. Or 70s actually, I think. Who's anticipating this? It seems so strange. Like some of the things that supposedly this international audience wants
It's
to
made by
watch.
David Productions. So David Productions will have all of the JoJo's fans and some of the other guys coming in for it.
Well, since we're talking about conspiracy theories next,
Sure,
I mean,
go on.
I feel like maybe positing a ludicrous theory that perhaps there's just so they just to generate the hype to begin with.
I mean,
possibly
but
as
that's
well.
my theory, right? It must just be someone with some sort of weird agenda, and I can't imagine there's necessarily money in some of these things, because some of these are just, it's someone's website about anime, and they've looked at some numbers.
So
And
Chris,
I don't think the industry is organized enough to really have that sort of response.
to a certain extent, I can agree, but at the same time, the bigger companies definitely could.
But they do it in an organized sort of way, right? Maybe My Hero gets, obviously My Hero gets a lot of that Funimation kind of.
So I want to
Bump of
ask you
things,
just
yeah.
quickly, where are you seeing the list in that order? Because I went to fall, and I ordered by members who are interested.
Right.
And at the top of the list for me is Chainsaw Man, then Mob Psycho, then BNHA.
So this particular list is from animesenpai.net.
Okay.
Which,
But on my anime list itself, Chainsaw Man is first. Mob Psycho, which I fully agree with, is second. BNHA is third, which confuses me. That shouldn't be so high. Spy Family, Bleach. I understand Bleach. There's a lot of people who want to remember it well and try to forget how it just dribbled off badly.
Yeah, no, that will never happen for me.
Mm,
I mean, this
uh,
this is probably from a few days ago, I suppose. So maybe it is
entirely
a bit
possible.
different.
Although I understand why Chainsaw Man is here. It's the most hyped manga at the moment.
Right.
No,
I mean, I get some of that. I question why people like some of this stuff, and I think maybe Dylan's right. It's just that they're following a sort of hype train about it.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Stuff that hasn't come out yet. The only reason to do this is hype.
I suppose from that perspective, it does make sense that maybe Hero
A few shonen
and,
would be highly
say, like,
ranked.
Spy
I mean,
Family on the
Witch
list.
from Mercury is low on this list, which is insane to me.
I think it was. I mean, they released the preview, the episode 0 of it, and it was.
It's so good.
But traditionally depressing, as all Gundam is.
Gundam starts are always depressing.
And I don't think that created kind of the right impression for a lot of people.
The world is on fire. Children starve in the streets. Meanwhile, shonen boys.
Right.
Here's a quick question. Did that website that you went to that had the rankings,
Yes.
did they themselves have a poll, an online poll that people...
They're just using data from Mel, basically. That's what they claim, anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, Mel is pretty reliable as a source because there's so many users.
Yeah. Obviously, Mel is just an amalgamation of opinions, so it doesn't really indicate any sort of reality whatsoever. I just wonder why some of these things happen. And that's my entire thing. Anyway, let's move on.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dylan, what do you have for us?
Yes. So, the National Network of Lawyers Against Spiritual Sales implored the education minister in Japan.
That's discrimination against Reagan.
It is. But they went ahead anyway. And they requested that the court order the dissolution of the Unification Church. Now, the Unification Church has, come under spotlight recently with certain links being made to the person who assassinated the former Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe. And they've been basically accused of being a cult, with various evidence provided. And this is just sort of... it allows a lot of conspiracy theories to go rampant.
Right.
And we've now got a formal legal association making a public request that this group basically not be allowed to be an association anymore.
I am all for dismissing that sort of quote-unquote religion. So I hope it goes through. That's my comment. What do you think, Yash?
Yes?
Yes?
What do you think?
I wanted to say I support this. The more I hear about the Unification Church thing, the more I'm like, how has this been kept undercover for this long? Abe was part of it. I think they've got 63 separate members of their parliament or whatever their governing body is, are a part of it. Its influence is ridiculous. The current prime minister is apologizing and saying he'll work for the rest of his term to limit their influence. How about limiting their influence by making them not exist?
That I think is a reasonable thing. Anything else, Dylan?
No, not really. Other than, they're one of the sort of justifications is that they're bringing light to the plight of second generation follower children, which for our context, you can think of the Church of Scientology. A lot of the actors who were sort of almost born into that religion,
Right.
really struggled to get out, and they're claiming that this sort of qualifies as a form of child abuse, which I feel like is a solid argument if it can be proved that that's what's happening, and that's one of the reasons why they're shunting that this should be dissolved.
Okay. Well, yes. What else do you have for us news-wise?
News-wise, I have that a teacher has been arrested for mixing bleach into curry intended for elementary school kids.
Light stories.
Usually Sorry?
Another light story.
Indeed, I'm sorry. In the Saitama prefecture,
Saitama,
an elementary school teacher decided that because they were not assigned the class they had requested, while still maintaining their job at that school, still having another class, in order to vent their frustration, they would mix bleach into some curry that was supposed to be served to 14 other students. The student in charge of serving determined that the food did not smell right, and decided to tell the students, "Listen, I don't think this food is good." So they put it out in the corridor, where it was later discovered and tested. Currently, this teacher is not arrested, and no one technically was harmed because no one ate the food. I think that this is going to be one of those things where Japan tries to keep its crime ratings low by not going to court or not specifically arresting officially this person. The police are saying that they are investigating. The school is saying the incident has been resolved, and everyone is keeping quiet. Main reason the newspapers know about it is because the parents have been kicking up a stir that someone tried to poison their children.
I mean, if I were a parent, I would be very pissed off right now.
So the police have the curry. They have some witnesses for the teacher dealing with it, and they of course have that the teacher has had some issues with the school recently. So they are just waiting to come to an outcome, according to this article. And that's my story.
It's quite a dark one. Okay. So, I suppose we're not on a light sort of subject. Just to say one thing that might lighten the mood about Saitama. In the anime, The Wasteful Days of High School Girls, the Saitama High School's anthem is, "In Saitama, summer is hot, spring is hot, autumn is hot, and winter is hot too." It's part of the school song.
Incredible.
Yeah, anyway. Moving on to cults, I guess. So I'll...
and conspiracy.
And conspiracy theories, right. But I'll start with some cults. I have two to discuss today. Happy Science, and one is not necessarily a cult, Soka Gakkai. It's a religion in Japan. It is, in fact, the largest religion in Japan.
Really?
With some 12 million members, more or less. And internationally, it has about 20 million members. So it is one of Japan's only international religions. And in fact, I went to the Soka Gakkai, Soka University, on an exchange program in 2014 for 6 months. So I've seen this place myself and can report on it in more than general terms, I suppose. But this... Sorry? Say again?
Indoctrinated.
Indeed. Thank you, Ikeda-sensei. That is the current and still definitely alive leader of the Soka Gakkai, Daisuke Ikeda. Actually, Daisaku Ikeda, I think, is his actual name. He is the third supreme leader of this Buddhist sect, right? They're an how do you say, they're basically the Japanese version of Buddhism. Nichiren, I think, is what they are. And Soka Gakkai translates into value-added teachings, something like that, right? So to generate wealth congregation, Soka Gakkai, which sounds an awful lot like something a cult would name itself. If we're perfectly value creation society. Sorry, that's the correct translation. They aren't cuckoo, but they were a nationalist organization before the World War in the 30s that was very conservative, very religious, and kind of also at the same time very intent on preserving like a very traditional idea of Japan, especially a sort of countryside idealistic version of Japan. And they wanted to make sure Japan didn't go to war, basically, was one of their major things. That is one of their major achievements. And especially since their third major leader, Ikeda-san, went to jail, they've been very legally minded about this sort of thing. So they've changed a lot of their stuff to make themselves a lot more mainstream. One of the stranger things they did is that, or Ikeda did, supposedly, is he put all of the political power in a group of women that run the organization. So he sort of decided that, like, I can't remember what it's called exactly, but like it's like the women's family committee or something. Essentially has all of the decision-making powers of the church.
Oh, okay.
And he did this because he thought that they would be better at sort of getting to all of the Baal members and making them do things. And I mean, he was right. The church grew dramatically. 1 in 12 Japanese people is a member of this church currently. So it was very successful. And up until 1999, they can be described as a weird Buddhist sect. You know, people are quite suspicious of them. But the thing that happened in 1999 was that the Liberal Democratic Party, the current ruling party in Japan, didn't win a majority in the parliament. And up until that point, they had been demonizing the Soka Gakkai as like this weird fringe religious organization that needed to be dealt with. Mm-hmm. But Soka Gakkai has a political party called the Clean Governance Party, the Komakai. And, you know, numbers added up, and suddenly the Liberal Democrats forgot about everything they'd ever said about this evil organization. And to this day, they are sort of in bed with each other. I think there are a number of Soka Gakkai, although they're not technically Soka Gakkai people, because you can't actually have a religious organization run for parliament in Japan. But a number of people who have been through the Soka education system, and they have their own schools and their own universities, are cabinet ministers currently in the Liberal Democratic Party's dispensation. So it's a major thing that kind of has a huge amount of influence in Japan at the moment, and has done for a good 100 years at this point. But they're not nuts. As I said, I went to their university, and there wasn't any sort of like indoctrination kind of per se or anything like that. You were required to go to a lot of events that I don't think a normal university would make someone go to. They have people they have children bust in from their various schools sometimes throughout the year to come and just look around the university. And they kind of require their older students to go and kind of take care of them, you know, and show them around and that sort of thing. So it comes off as it's quite a large university by Japanese standards. Maybe about 10,000 people could go to that university concurrently. And it comes off as like a family-run business in a lot of ways, except that it's an incredibly wealthy family, and there's a lot of like gold-edged marble and statues of founders and stuff around the campus. But it didn't feel like like a religious organization necessarily from at least a Western perspective. It didn't feel like I was at like a Catholic school or a Midwestern university or something like that, Baptist university or whatever. And I think that's part of the appeal, is that they kind of come off as quite normal, but there's a sort of undercurrent of intense nationalism. But it's a weird nationalism, right? I'm going to talk about Happy Science, which is also a nationalist organization. But the Soka Gakkai people, when Abe was changing the constitution so Japan could cooperate with America in military things, right? One of its members went and sat outside the parliament and set himself on fire in opposition to this, I think in 2014. And they were intensely against all forms of violence, all forms of war, and they've done a lot of work internationally as well to sort of build that organization, to the point where the ambassador to Japan from China is one of their people. So this Japanese group is so mainstream that a Chinese politician is one of their members. And to the point that not even the Chinese Communist Party seems to have really a problem with it, because essentially it's quite a normal, on the face of it, organization. Sorry, go on.
That would align with China's interests in terms of foreign policy. If they could get Japan to be more pacifistic, that's a good thing for them as well.
It makes sense from a Chinese perspective, for sure. And that's just contrast Soka. So Buddhist organization, peaceful to the point of really taking it to extreme, setting themselves on fire, sort of thing. There's a little rebellion in 2016 where a bunch of members quit because Akira Sensei is probably dead, and probably has been for a while, or he has degraded to the point where he can't actually do anything. I think it's widely accepted that basically like the committee that controls the society, writes messages from him and sends out some pictures every year, sort of thing. But what happened was that they've been in bed with the Liberal Democratic Party for 22 years now. And I think what's happened is not so much that they've sort of infiltrated the Liberal Democratic Party, it's sort of the other way around that's happened. And you're getting a lot more older people in the Soka Gakkai organization, which is strange because part of their teachings is that they want younger people to be in charge of things. But since they joined the Liberal Democratic Party, the average age of like committee members and stuff has dramatically increased. And now they're not complaining about the Liberal Democratic Party's push to remilitarize Japan anymore. So they've become a lot more mainstream in that sort of sense. They're kind of okay with war, kind of okay with some bad things that the Liberal Democratic Party wants to do. And that's the sort of the way it stands now. Now I just want to contrast that with Happy Science, which is a wonderful name. Kofuku no Kagaku. The Joy of Science. Also known as the Institute for Research in Human Happiness. They are a cult. Definitely a cult. There's no two ways about it. They're a cult in the style of, what's Tom Cruise's one? Scientology. So they claim to have 12 million members throughout the world. As far as anyone can verify, there are about 30,000 of them. And they do also have a a political wing of the party. But this man who's in charge, Ryuho Okawa, is an interesting character. So he claims to be the reincarnation of a god. Not of, I suppose, the god, but he is the god of humanity. That's his claim. He was, the god form of him, was the emperor of Venus. And 4 billion years ago, when Earth was created, he changed his name from whatever it was then to whatever it is now, and decided to create humanity. So he went about, sculpting Earth in such a way that humans would eventually evolve and be able to inherit it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
His name is apparently El Cantare, and he reincarnates himself periodically to lead humanity in the form of various figures, and just so happens to currently be Okawa. But he claims to have been both Jesus and Muhammad, and I think at one point Gandhi, and so on and so forth. Even some people who were concurrently alive at the same time. Like, he was also Margaret Thatcher, and I'm pretty sure Margaret Thatcher and Gandhi were alive at the same time, so that's a bit of a strange one. And regularly, in press conferences, he will channel the spirits of these people. And he has, in fact, on camera spoken as Margaret Thatcher in English. His English is not very good, and I can't say I know too much about Margaret Thatcher, but I think she could put a sentence together a damn well better than he was able to when channeling her.
Oh no.
Anyway, so that's him, and his wife was the political person. Also, obviously, a reincarnation of a goddess. Must be.
I mean, how could you not be?
How could you not be?
So, normal people don't start cults. That's just boring.
She tried to run for office and failed because her platform is she wants to carpet bomb China and North Korea.
Oh, lovely.
And that's the contrast really with Soka Gakkai. I mean, it's crazier in a lot of ways. It doesn't actually conform to a known religion. And I think some of the stuff is basically based off like some Nietzsche philosophy in some ways. So maybe there is like something there, but nothing mainstream
going on there.
Yeah. And they are intensely militaristic, because this man believes he's the reincarnation of a divine ruler of all of humanity and of Venus for some reason.
So he wants to create a proper unification.
He wants to bring peace to the world by destroying a lot of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're but it's strange, right? Because you think there would be more global aspirations, but everything is really aimed at basically what your far right Japanese person kind of thinks of the world. So they don't really have any ambitions for Africa or Europe or America or South America, anything like that, other than Brazil, because there's Japanese people living there that that could pay their dues. But they have ambitions for South Korea and North Korea and China and Vietnam and anywhere that was vaguely, part of the Japanese empire in the past is basically a country they want to invade again and control for the good of the world, right?
Definitely for that, yeah.
The good of the world, yeah.
Good of the world. But yeah, that's basically them. They are also, incidentally, the organization that Pierce from Community's church was based off of.
Yeah.
The Laser Lotusts, I think. And his Eightfold Path. Because, of course, it's not as weird as that. They have the Fourfold Path. Much more reasonable way of interpreting something.
So, I mean, is your four-pole path get plane with bombs, fly plane with bombs to North Korea, step 3 is drop bombs.
You see,
step 4, profit.
you see, once El-Qatari ascends the throne of Japan and supplants the emperor himself, he will then personally fly the magic plane with his holy bombs and conduct the war, I believe. I will say they have they have great propaganda, and it's worth checking out just for the propaganda. He holds the record for the most books written in 1 year by any person alive. In total, he's written more than 3,000 books in English.
Ouch.
Which is not possible, but most of them are transcribed from his speeches and, basically sold in pamphlet form. But apparently, that qualifies as a book enough for the record. What he's also done is he's funded the creation of a number of anime, and I encourage the watching of it, not because I want anyone to convert to this, just because it comes across as any like isekai opening about the creation myth of a particular world, It's like, El-Qatari's original name was well, he was from Venus, but he gazed towards Earth and decided to create the master race called humans, so on and so forth.
Master race. Good conspiracies need a master race. That's one of like the underlying traits.
Indeed.
Except, of course, we know in this group it would be the Japanese.
Of course.
But not all of them.
No,
not all of them. But
only the true believers who are the true master race people. Yeah. I mean, he sounds like Senzo X from like Saga of Tanya the Evil, right? It's like let's make people better by bombing them. let's throw people into war, and that'll solve problems.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, he sounds a lot more insane than even that god. Although I think most of it is probably just an act, right? Because one of his biographies is called "To Become God."
That's like very L. Ron Hubbard-y kind of.
Another one is "How to Raise a God." And I guess it's kind of like it's almost like he's telling people how to. This is like cult 101. This is how you do it. Without getting cult, of course.
There's a bit of healthy narcissism, or unhealthy, I suppose, narcissism in that, right? Like you pull a grift, and you become God to a lot of people.
Yes, yeah.
Tell people how you did it, otherwise people won't appreciate. The other people won't appreciate how smart you are.
I think also, just from the look of him, if you remember that first season of Mob Psycho, the physical form of Ekubo also bears a striking resemblance to him.
Yeah.
Especially his raiment and such. But yeah, that'll do it for my weird Japanese cults, just the two of them. They're incidentally part of what Japan calls the new religions. And
what's qualified as a new religion?
It's a spiritual movement that is borderline a cult, basically, and generally they are a new religion because they're something devised as part of the new era of Japan. So that is post the Meiji Reformation, right? But most of them are actually post World War II, because they sort of try to build on the dissatisfaction that a lot of the displacement that happened during that period caused in people. So Soka Gakkai's congregation is the dissatisfied rural population that was more or less forced to move to cities in order to find work. So that's why they're an ultra-conservative group. Not necessarily insane or anything, but they sort of believe in the old ways and they don't like the idea of like war and such, because that caused them a lot of personal trouble, right? They would have been happy if people could have just, stayed in their hometowns and continued how they always had. Happy science is everyone's unhappy currently, so this is the way to find your true happiness in a modern world, by carpet bombing North Korea.
I mean, humans carpet bomb quite a lot, so you would imagine that they do so because it makes them happy.
I gotta say, people doing the carpet bombing often have great big smiles on their faces.
Yeah, like
So
manic
maybe it
ones.
works.
Yeah, maybe it does.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Yeah, but yeah, that's me. What do you guys have for us?